Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this Monday evening in-depth ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. On satellite today, here on Labor Day, we can see quite a bit of interesting things happening. We've got a tropical system named Earl we're keeping an eye on here. We can see there's actually a little cutoff low, a little shortwave that's spinning right over the Red River Valley of the south, but then the broad shield of precipitation that's out ahead of this, which extends all the way from parts of Texas, clearing up parts of New England where there's been quite a bit of flooding today. Lots of embedded thunderstorms in this as well, and some of the cloud cover on the backside is keeping things cool. In the meantime, if you go over to the west, it's interesting, flowing around the large upper level ridge, which we talked a lot about in this forecast over the last couple of weeks. You can even see that the tops of the storms coming off of the Rocky Mountains here in the Front Range are blowing off to the west. And that's kind of an interesting setup here that just tells you the strength of that ridge. And you can also see with this the wildfire smokes and some of the fires throughout the west getting pulled into this system all the way over here in parts of the Midwest. Now, over the weekend, this is what our weekend total precipitation looked like through 5 p.m. here on Monday evening. Some locally very heavy rain throughout the Tennessee Valley, getting over toward the Appalachian Mountains, and then throughout New England, right in through here. There was also some rains that hit the parts of Illinois and Missouri, stretching back into Texas, just to kind of look at a couple of other areas. And some extremely strong winds came through parts of Montana on Friday. A couple of folks sent in some interesting videos and pictures of this, but not much precipitation out of that line that went through. And this is where all the heat is currently put throughout much of the United States. It's really here throughout the West, getting into the Pacific Northwest, Canadian Prairie, and Montana. Okay, so some of the more important updates in the tropics, let's get to those first. This is the latest 5-day outlook from the National Hurricane Center. And earlier this weekend, we had Earl named, which is currently a tropical storm, Danielle, which is moving out to open ocean, and then a wave that just came off of Africa that's currently got a 50% chance of surviving. Now, Earl, if we just take a close look at this from the National Hurricane Center, I want to take you to its warning cone. There it is. And they've currently got it forecast to become a hurricane, maybe even a major hurricane as it skirts right past Bermuda, which is here. So this could be troublesome for Bermuda, although if the system goes to the east of Bermuda, that would at least put the left-hand side of the storm on Bermuda, which is a better scenario than having the right-hand side. But as we look out here, we can see that this is the main track for where this is going to be going, which does keep it away from the U.S. coastline. And it helps that that large front is here to kind of block and push this out of the way. That's just one of the many reasons for that. But I would like to take you over to the East Pacific and kind of bring you up to speed on some things we've been watching there. Because we will be on the lookout for a storm system. Here, let's bring this up. Oh, I don't want wind tracks. I want track density. There we are. For existing storm systems, there we are. And I want to be watching for what could happen with this tropical system here in time. Because, here's the southern part of California, and there are some forecast members that are trying to take what's left of this and pull it toward California and the moisture into the west, and eventually here, maybe even toward the Pacific Northwest. And earlier in the weekend, we saw this happening. And I think some of us were like, okay, let's just keep an eye on it. But now there seems to be a little bit more of a robust signal that something like this could occur. So we're going to come back to that in a few moments. But I want folks that are watching this out in the West to know that there's been some pretty solid evidence of having something coming out of the East Pacific. The GFS has even got it closer, as you can see here. So we need to keep an eye on this as we move forward. Okay, bigger picture. Let's just take 3 different timestamp views of what's going on here. This is the next 15 days in terms of precipitation anomalies. And a lot of this moisture that you see coming into this area, okay, right in through here, is partly due to what's left of this tropical system. It also helps that there's a deeper trough coming in through here late in the time period. I'll show you that in a few seconds. A lot of the wet weather you see here is coming in 2 rounds. We'll kind of pick up both of those rounds here in a few moments, but there are flood watches that extend throughout this entire area, and there could be quite a bit of very heavy precipitation there coming soon. I'll show you that in a different way in a moment. But drier in the interior overall. That doesn't mean we will not see precipitation from Texas through the Midwest up in the Canadian Prairie. But just when you compare the next 15 days to average, the model's picking up on a little bit drier bias. While we're here, I would like to show you the chance of getting at least an inch of precipitation over the next 10 days, which is seen here. And let's step this up to 2 inches. And now we can really see some of those heavy rainfall corridors. And a lot of this is happening now and coming in the next few hours. But remember, this area is in drought. So we're bringing in extremely heavy rainfall into an area that has been in drought. So we need to keep an eye out on that. But you can see the drier look here into the interior. Well, here's the next timestamp to look at. And this is a 30-day outlook from the new European Weeklies, which were just released this afternoon. And it's going from the time period of the 18th of September to the 18th of October. As we look out over that such time period, we notice that most of the country is favoring a drier bias. I'll say it again, this does not account for what could be any tropical activity that comes into the Gulf Coast or into Florida or into the Southeast. That's always a possibility that is just unforecastable by the longer range models here. But we do see that for most, for example, harvest time period here in the Midwest, there are no early indicators of extremely heavy rainfall. And we've had several forecasts hit this same time period. So for example, here's the previous outlook. Here's the one before that. And you notice that for that same stretch of days, the models have stayed on the drier side of normal, suggesting that we could have a pretty rapid finishing of the crop, especially in the midsection of the country here, as we move kind of toward the month of October. Now, the third time step I want you to look at is the brand new European monthly data. So we have a 7-month forecast that comes out on the 5th of every month, and I just waited this evening to record this when it came out. So this is, first of all, we're going to look at ocean temperatures, because ultimately that's going to be our key driver, or at least the indicator of the key drivers going into fall and winter. So what we're going to see here is the models continued like they had suggested from the late summer runs, that by December, getting into January and February, if you just keep your eye right here, the models are continuing to watch. Here it is. There's December into January and February. They're continuing to kind of wash out the La Niña signal. And we've seen this a few different times from the forecast models, but it's showing up once again here, which means we could enter winter and go through maybe the beginning of it with a La Niña signal, a La Niña controlling the pattern, but it looks as though it's going to be breaking as we get past February toward March. Okay, so if we zoom into the United States and we see what that means in terms of precipitation anomalies, let's take it back here. This would be September, October, November. And that's actually been a pretty consistent look across the country from the previous run as well. As we then work our way into October, November, December, we see a dry bias in the models that stretches from the Mississippi River Valley, the whole thing, and then from Texas through the southeast. We see possibly an early and wet onset to the flow that comes into the northwest for their wet season from Northern California into Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. Now, as we go into November, December, January, and then look at this one, December, January, February, the model still has a La Niña look to it. And what I mean by that is we don't get a sense of any sort of a strong subtropical jet. It appears to be giving us that northwest trajectory on the jet that then dives and brings in quite a bit of cooler air and then likely ejects through the Ohio River Valley, increasing the storm threats here. So what I'd like to say is this is still very much a La Niña look for winter, but I think that things are going to start to shift around a little bit. Now, I will come back to the near-term forecast for South America at the end of this video, but I would like to show you that the latest outlook for December, January, February, now remember, this is a harvest time period for the first crop of soybeans grown in the north. We see that the models are trying to draw kind of a dry bias south of this line. And you could argue that more than 50% of their soybean crop is grown south of that line. And it's been pretty consistent with this look. It's also been consistent with the drier look in Argentina, which makes me think that the models have really kind of adhered to the idea that La Niña will be the dominant climate driver going into this fall and winter, or their spring and summer. So this could be very important for South America's production and limiting if there is drier conditions, especially in the south, getting into Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina. Again, something I'll come back to in just a few moments. But if we come back to the United States here, and kind of look at this winter time period and the fall time period, I can kind of show you that the latest for September, October, November from the CPC continues to favor a very similar outlook as to what you saw for this harvest time period in the United States from the European model, and with the chance of the early precipitation coming into the northwest. So that's quite consistent. But to get to the longer range forecast from the CPC, I first want to just do a quick reiteration on what's going on with La Niña. Now, the late summer model runs were very far off in the European model. They had predicted that the La Niña would fade more quickly, and instead, see the dashed line down here, this is what it actually did. So those were the July runs. If we look at the new September runs, they are trying to bring this back into what we'd call INSO neutral, which is right here and above by the time we get into that December-January time period. Now, it's important to note that the spread is large. It always is. But the overall ensemble average does suggest that a full third year of La Niña may not be on the table once we get out here into that January, February, March time period. That's important for next spring, so we need to watch this evolve very carefully. The main modeling centers, like the Australians, the Canadians, the Europeans, which we just saw, this would be the Japanese, the French, the US, and the British. You notice that from September to October, La Niña seems to maintain strength or even strengthen. By November, this could be a transitional time period, but still quite dominant of a factor. But notice by December into January, look at that again, December to January, most of the models are backing things back off toward INSO neutral. So there's some consistency among the modeling groups. The Canadians and the British are the only two that really keep that strong La Niña signal in place. So we do have quite a bit to be watching here. But with NOAA backing off, and I'll be honest, NOAA's done the best job this entire year with La Niña. With NOAA backing off, they still maintain a very La Niña look to their winter forecast. Drier in California, drier south. Well, this again is December, January, February, with wetter in the northwest and active Ohio River Valley storm track. So that's when the jet stream does this versus having that strong subtropical component. So I'm just going to tell you, as we go toward our cold season here in North America, the number one thing that you will hear me discussing is, do we develop the subtropical jet? That's it. That's what's missing usually when there is a La Niña. That would be one of the very first signals that La Niña has lost its grip on the pattern. Now, right now, it's still got a grip. We see a lot of very warm water in the North Pacific and Atlantic, and plenty of cold water continuing to upwell here across the open Pacific Ocean. So this has gained position and continued to cool as we go into fall. So this is definitely going to be our major climate driver through this fall, getting into early winter. I'm talking about after we get into the new year. So given that, I just want to point out that all of our indicators are still pointing in the same direction. See the stronger trades in through here. That's that same area. But the Indian Ocean, once we get into mid-September, is showing, well, some easterly winds here. And so what I need to be thinking about with this is what that might mean for some sort of late September pattern change. But in order to kind of see what this could do, I need some more evidence as to the way the MJO is going to bump out of this null space where it spent so much time. The MJO has just been dominated by La Niña, pushing those trade winds over in this direction for so long that even the longer range model runs still just try to take it out into phase 4 and 5. But to be honest, the difference historically between phase 4, 5, and 6 in our fall weather is pretty spread out, which means that we need to be watching for any shifts at all in the momentum of the jet stream in the North Pacific as to any lead time on disruptive systems for fall and in terms of bringing in a frost. Okay, so that's what we're going to have to keep our eye on. I don't believe that this tropical signal's got the dominant or is the dominant piece in all of this. Okay, so we've given all this kind of our attention. We've looked at the longer term stuff. Let's now come back and see what's going on in the near term. So as we discussed, we have flood watches that stretch from Alabama clear to Maine. While on the west coast, this is all excessive heat. This is red flag warning, and this shade in through here represents heat advisories. So if we just take a look at what's causing this, or at least the atmosphere's response to it, what we notice is a very large ridge that's parked here over the western United States right now here on Monday. But as we play through, remember last week we were discussing this trough that was going to sweep through like the 8th and the 9th. And here it is coming through on Friday the 9th. And that trough, which is anchored to a deeper low that's up here over near the Canadian archipelago, will be a source of, a system that'll come through, a front that'll bring in some precip. So K, Earl, and this low that's tucked in between. So going into Friday and Saturday, while Earl gets rocketed up here into the North Pacific, this is Earl, okay, right here. We do see K and the moisture around it getting pulled into possibly California. And this trough sweeps through, but there's still a trough out ahead of it. Now, what's all this mean? Well, what this is going to do is this is going to really deliver a lot of moisture east, and it's going to starve moisture from that front I was worried about for severe weather this Friday. My severe weather kind of concern here has gone down because of this. What does the, let's get this all the way out there to kind of match up late. So this is next Monday getting into Tuesday. And what you notice again is that that trough that started here coming into Louisiana, and then moving up and kind of linking with the trough that comes through in the 8th and 9th, kind of sits here and spins. It's cut off, it's closed. And it's in the GFS as well. So this is the European and the GFS. So why I'm trying to set this up for you here is I want to note where all of this is going to deliver most of that rainfall. So let's go back and watch it. I'm going to go to the European first, but we'll compare models in a second. As we play this out, we see a lot of scattered storms over the next 36 to 48 hours that stretch from the southeast into New England. So this gets us into Tuesday morning, afternoon, and evening. See it right there? So that's where some of that heavy rain is going to be. It will get back into the eastern Corn Belt as well. We then play through Wednesday and get into Thursday, where higher pressure tries to build into the midsection of the country. But here's the system, see it right there, that's dragging a front by Thursday afternoon through the upper Midwest. And as it comes through, there it is, on Friday morning, very early, could initiate some storms. But remember, at that time, so there's a trough here, and there's that other trough that's there. And then here's the low associated with K, and here is Earl off our screen, okay? But as we play this forward, you notice that there's kind of just like a pencil-thin line of convection here in the models by Saturday and going on into the Saturday evening and Sunday, possibly delivering heavier rain into this corridor. Take note of where K is, okay? As we play into this weekend, that same upper level low just kind of gets stuck here. And moisture from K gets spread. See all this? I know it doesn't look like much, but this gets spread next week into parts of the Intermountain West. Now the problem with getting a low stuck here is a lot of wet weather out ahead of it, lighter rains on the backside, but pesky. And this is September 13th. And you see it just sitting and spinning there as I go back and forth over that time period. And so while K's moisture starts to move into the western United States, there's going to be a slow-moving cutoff low that sits here, possibly causing problems. So when I look at just the next 7 days, as that low emerges and the front swipes through to grab it, plus K, we're looking here at precipitation anomalies from the ECMWF. So this is wetter than normal and this is drier. Here's the same map, but from the GFS. It's more aggressive on K coming farther to the north, less so on the precipitation here, but it has that same low that starts there and moves off and gets cut off in this area. So it's wet. But to compare the two models, you can see in these colors where the GFS is wetter, and in these colors where the ECMWF is wetter, all right? So it's clear to see that the ECMWF is more aggressive on that front and the rain that comes through parts of Nebraska, Iowa, and parts of Missouri, but drier in through here where the GFS targets more moisture. The GFS brings in more there, the Europeans farther to the east. And look at how much more aggressive the GFS is on delivering moisture from K. So the models are still quite all over the place, as you can tell here with the next week's worth of rainfall. But take note of this. By the time we get out there to day 10, that's September 15, the models have over the weekend trended toward developing a trough off the west coast, ridging in the midsection of the country, and trough in New England. If you're going, well, that looks familiar, this is what we saw throughout so much of summer. So where does that place the drier air? Right where we saw summer drought develop. Possibly more stormy in the Intermountain West. No indications of a tropical system, though. So let's flip this conversation over to temperature. We saw these highs today. It was very hot throughout the Central Valley of California down to Phoenix, 108 to 112. We did get the brief cool down we talked about last week coming into parts of the Pacific Northwest. But under cloud cover, a lot of this area was cooler. The Western Plains very hot. Here's Tuesday's highs. Again, this is why we have the excessive heat warnings here. 101 in Boise. But you can just see how hot things are here in the West. By Wednesday, the heat comes back into Montana. Places there may be up to 20 plus degrees above average. Thursday, the heat moves into the northern plains while the cooler air clears out here. But you know that coming in on Friday is that next front. See it cooling things down. So we could have a 20 to 30 degree swing in temperatures from Thursday into Friday here while the West Coast stays hot. Going into the weekend, that's Saturday's temperatures. Now we're bringing in that low. Remember that low is coming up here delivering moisture, keeps things cool while this area once again stays on that kind of roller coaster of hotter temperatures. How about the longer term outlook on temperatures here? This is a 5-day sliding window of temperature anomalies. And now we see going fully through the second week of September, the moisture and the cooler air associated with it here. But what's important to understand is that this trough isn't linked up to cold air in Canada. So it's not like it's delivering any early risk of a frost, and we still don't see that going all the way out there to the 20th of September, which is just a day before the start of, official start of fall in North America. So that's our outlook, getting out there to September 20th. What I want to finish with is a quick discussion about South America. Over the next week, the model's been aggressive on some heavier rain in southern Brazil, but you see the monsoon has yet to get going. The new data, looking out there over the next 45 days, still maintains a look that the monsoon will come in early and wetter than average for much of Brazil's growing area, drier south. But the new model runs are drier than previous. Here was the previous run. Notice how much wetter things were. It was initialized much wetter. And the run before that, much wetter. So what I want to tell you is that the model is actually drying things out a little bit, although it's still showing a wetter than normal signal in this forecast, okay? I would also like to show you that over in southern China, where all the drought has continued to be problematic, very, very dry, while the Indian monsoon appears to just continue to be very strong, much above average precipitation in the forecast from the model here, the ECMWF Weeklies. And finally, just to show you, because we did last week about Australia, they're also continuing to see above average precipitation, which is very consistent with the La Niña and the negative Indian Ocean dipole signals we've got. So that brings us up just to kind of speed on some international things. But with that, I'll wrap it up, and I'll talk to you again on Thursday. Thanks.